In this episode, we start by getting practical about what it feels like to sit for the Global Information Assurance Certification, GIAC, Security Leadership Certification, GSLC, exam, because the best studying in the world can get wasted if you misunderstand the game you are about to play. A certification test is not only a knowledge check, it is also a performance event with rules, pressure, and time boundaries. Beginners often assume that if they just learn enough facts, the exam will take care of itself, but that is rarely true on the first attempt. What helps most is turning a vague, intimidating test into something predictable. How questions are presented, what the exam is really trying to measure, how scoring typically behaves, and how to manage the clock without panic. Once you can picture the experience clearly, your studying becomes more focused, and your test day choices become calmer and more consistent. A useful way to think about exam structure is to separate what is fixed from what you control. The fixed parts are things like how the test is delivered, the overall length, and the type of prompts you will see, which usually means a computer-based testing, CBT, format that moves one question at a time and expects you to select an answer from options. The parts you control are your pacing, your decision discipline, and your ability to keep making good choices even when a question annoys you or feels unfamiliar. A leadership-focused security exam tends to mix concept recognition with judgment calls, which means you may see questions that feel less like memorizing definitions and more like picking the best decision under constraints. That can surprise new learners who expect purely technical trivia. Understanding that blend is the first step toward building a strategy that fits the exam rather than fighting it. The question style on a leadership-oriented security exam usually pushes you to recognize what matters most, not just what could be true in some universe. Many items are built around short scenarios, where you are given a business context, a risk, a constraint, and then asked what you should do next or what the best outcome looks like. That sounds subjective at first, but it becomes much clearer when you realize that good questions are anchored in priorities. Protect safety and critical operations first, reduce risk in a way that aligns to the mission, and choose actions that are realistic for an organization. Beginners sometimes get stuck because multiple answers look reasonable and they assume the exam is tricking them. More often, the exam is testing whether you can rank options by impact, feasibility, and alignment with governance, rather than just spotting a single keyword. Another common pattern is what you might call best answer logic, where more than one option is technically correct, but only one is the best response given the way the prompt is framed. That means small words matter, like first, most likely, best, or primary. If a question asks for the first action, you are being tested on sequencing, not on the final solution. If it asks for the most likely risk, you are being tested on probability and typical failure patterns, not on worst-case imagination. This is where beginners often overthink and drift into extreme scenarios that the prompt never suggested. A simple discipline helps. Stay inside the boundaries the question gives you, and solve the problem that is actually on the page. When you answer the question you wish they had asked, you tend to miss points even if your knowledge is solid. It also helps to recognize that many options are designed to reveal a specific misunderstanding. Some choices are too perfect, as if you could rewrite the organization overnight, buy anything, and pause the business to rebuild security from scratch. Other choices are too narrow, like applying a single technical fix when the question is about policy, governance, accountability, or risk acceptance. On leadership exams, wrong answers often fall into these traps. Overly technical tunnel vision, overly bureaucratic paperwork without action, or overly dramatic measures that ignore business realities. A strong test taker learns to spot those patterns quickly, not because you are gaming the test, but because you are practicing professional judgment. When you can label a choice as unrealistic, incomplete, or misaligned, you shorten decision time and reduce second-guessing. Scoring can feel mysterious, but you can approach it with a mindset that keeps you steady even when you cannot see your exact score while testing. Most certification exams are built so that each question matters, and your job is to accumulate enough correct choices to cross a passing threshold. You do not need perfection, and aiming for perfection can actually damage your performance because it encourages you to spend too long on a few difficult questions. A healthier goal is consistent accuracy, where you protect time for the entire exam and keep your brain fresh for the end. New learners sometimes panic after a few hard questions and assume they are failing, but difficulty is not a reliable signal of outcome. The exam is supposed to challenge you, and the best performers keep working the process rather than trying to predict the final result midstream. To build a timing strategy, you need a realistic picture of what the clock will feel like, and that means planning for variability. Some questions will be fast because they test clear definitions or straightforward distinctions. Others will be slower because they require you to compare multiple plausible actions, interpret a short scenario, or avoid a tempting wrong answer. A good pacing approach is to treat time like a budget, not like a race, and to make sure you never spend your entire budget on early questions just because you are nervous. One practical way to do this is to decide on a target average per question and then allow yourself to borrow time only intentionally. If you spend extra time, you should know you are spending it and why, rather than drifting into it and losing track. A key skill is knowing when to move on, because the exam rewards forward motion. There will be items where you are unsure, and the difference between a strong and weak strategy is what you do in that moment. A weak strategy is rereading the same prompt again and again while your confidence drains and the clock keeps moving. A stronger strategy is to make the best choice you can with the information available, mark it mentally as uncertain, and keep your momentum. Many exams allow you to review, but even if review is available, you should treat it as a bonus feature, not your main plan. Your main plan is to answer every question once with a clear head. The worst outcome is reaching the end with unanswered questions because you got stuck earlier. When you choose an answer under uncertainty, you can rely on a small set of leadership decision principles that tend to hold across topics. Prefer actions that reduce risk measurably rather than actions that only create documentation. Prefer actions that establish accountability, clear roles, and repeatable processes rather than one-off heroics. Prefer actions that preserve evidence and maintain options, especially when the scenario hints at incidents or investigations. Prefer actions that align security controls to business priorities, because leadership security is about enabling the mission safely, not about maximizing control for its own sake. These principles help you eliminate wrong choices even when you do not remember a specific term. They also help you avoid being pulled toward the answer that sounds most technical, which is often not the point of a leadership exam. Another timing trap is perfectionist reading, where you feel like you must fully understand every word before you can choose anything. Careful reading matters, but there is a difference between careful and obsessive. A disciplined approach is to read the last line first, the part that tells you what is being asked, and then read the scenario with that goal in mind. That prevents you from collecting details that are not actually needed and keeps you from spiraling into imagined complexity. If you notice that your eyes are scanning the same sentence multiple times, that is usually a sign you are anxious, not a sign you need more information. Reset by summarizing the question in your own head in one sentence. Then choose the option that best matches that sentence. This keeps your reasoning clean and protects the clock. It is also worth preparing for how the exam will try to distract you with familiar buzzwords. Beginners often latch onto a word they recognize and then choose an answer that matches that word, even if it does not fit the question. For example, if the scenario mentions a breach, you might immediately pick an option about forensics even if the question is asking about containment priorities or communication coordination. If the scenario mentions compliance, you might pick an option about audits even if the question is asking about risk ownership or policy enforcement. The exam is checking whether you can stay goal-focused under pressure. A strong habit is to identify the category of the question before you answer. Is it about risk, governance, incident response, identity, cryptography, or business continuity? Once you name the category, you are less likely to chase unrelated words. Many learners worry about retakes and what a second attempt would mean, and that worry can distort their test day behavior. A timing strategy should include emotional management, because anxiety makes you burn time and miss simple questions. One of the most effective mental moves is to treat each question as independent, even if you feel you missed the last one. You cannot change the last answer, but you can still win the next point. Another helpful move is to normalize uncertainty, because being unsure on some items is expected, not a sign of failure. The goal is not to feel confident on every question, but to make the best decision you can repeatedly. When you practice that mindset, you stop wasting time on self-judgment and keep your attention on the task. To make your strategy real, picture the exam as a sequence of decisions with 3 levels of effort. Level 1 is quick confidence, where the question matches something you know clearly and you answer efficiently. Level 2 is moderate analysis, where you compare 2 plausible options and use the prompt wording and leadership principles to pick the best. Level 3 is controlled uncertainty, where you eliminate what you can, choose the best remaining option, and move on without spiraling. The mistake beginners make is treating every question like Level 3, which exhausts them and destroys timing. The goal is to reserve Level 3 effort for the questions that truly deserve it. If you do that, you keep enough mental energy to stay sharp through the final stretch, which is where fatigue often causes avoidable errors. Finally, decode what success looks like in the room, not just on paper. Success looks like steady pace, simple decision rules, and a calm willingness to move forward even when a question feels imperfect. It looks like reading for what is being asked, not for everything that could be asked, and choosing the option that best fits the constraints and priorities the scenario presents. It looks like using leadership judgment to eliminate unrealistic answers, and using time discipline to protect the whole exam rather than sacrificing the end for the beginning. If you take nothing else away, take this: your knowledge and your strategy are partners, and you need both to perform well. With a clear picture of structure, question style, scoring mindset, and timing habits, you turn the exam from a foggy threat into a navigable process you can execute.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.